Hello guys, welcome to a new video. Finally, I will share with you the second part of the story of Alice Asylum. If you haven't watched the first part, I recommend you to watch it before this video. So let's start. After defeating the corrupted judge, Alice encounters the Shadow, who taunts her with applause and sinister words about justice and corruption. The Shadow blames Alice for the chaos, suggesting she look within herself for the truth. Despite Alice's anger and attempts to fight back, the Shadow easily traps her by opening the floor beneath her feet, causing her to fall into darkness. The scene concludes with Shadow's chilling declaration of guilty, leaving Alice to face her fall into the unknown. Alice confronts the caterpillar in a setting filled with heat, smoke, and destruction, fueled by her rage. Frustrated, she destroys a mushroom, sending debris flying. The caterpillar shares a message about anger, masking deeper emotions, and blowing fiery smoke as the scene dissolves. The next setting is a dreamlike version of a hospital from 1863 with muted colors and ghostly specters that Alice cannot touch. She appears solid and real, wearing her nightgown, while the other figures remained intangible. She watches a memory of herself as a child called the Child of Fire. This younger Alice is seen being rescued and taken to a hospital after the terrible event. As the player explores the hospital, they see glimpses of people from Alice's past, like her family, doctor, and a figure named Bumby. Bumby glimmer glasses make her remember the guy with glasses she saw when her house was burning. Alice recalls her struggle to heal and how others misunderstood the deep damage she carried. The memory ends with a haunting moment where Alice sees her younger self in bed, shaken by a shadow and letting out a terrifying scream. Strange figures and voices surround her as she remembers two key characters, Dr. Bumby and Wilt Redcliffe. They discuss Alice as if she was a project, showing little care for her well-being. Redcliffe emphasizes his point by holding a black notebook. Alice recognizes this man and recalls violent moments. She fights doctors and nurses, her anger taking control. Flashbacks show police visiting her, holding notebooks, and Alice attacking a doctor with a scalpel. Her shadow self looms over these events. The game moves to a scene where Alice is rocking backwards and forth in her asylum cell. She argues with herself like it's a conversation between two people. One of those blames the other for her parents' death and thinks she is too weak to do what needs to be done. It's during this moment that child Alice and Alice's shadow separate, and the first one goes to the circus while the second one becomes the dominant one. Alice falls into a new area, greeted by a large sign that says "Welcome to Croquet. Play forever." The place is chaotic, filled with Wonderland discarded characters, broken chess pieces, a wandering peacock, and old card guards. They all hold mismatched croquet mallets, eating each other without a clear reason. As Alice explores, she sees a disturbing scene. A fish person in a top hat and worn suit is being attacked by a mob. They eat him with their mallets, shouting accusations like "You lost" and "Last place." The fish person looks scared and confused but doesn't respond. He tries to escape, but there's no way out. They kill him. Alice receives her own croquet mallet. It's a special weapon that allows her to perform tricky ranged shots, and the mallet head is designed for shock, stunning enemies. It can also bounce off obstacles, hitting enemies from different angles. The crowd starts the game as Alice stands at the starting point, feeling unsure. Despite the chaos, she knows she must move on instead of getting caught up in their game. Alice is forced to play an intense croquet game across floating islands. The game combines racing combat and strange dream-like challenges. The difficulty increases as she progresses through different chapters, giving her a chance to improve her skills. It's explained to Alice that no one can ever truly win the game. The players are supposed to help each other to escape, but none of them want to cooperate and do everything so that the others aren't able to win. The situation worsens as chaos spreads and disrupts everything, similar to what Alice witnessed in the courthouse earlier. Alice doesn't just use the croquet mallet, she also relies on other skills and weapons. By using a clever trick, she wins her first game of croquet and receives a pardon, allowing her to move forward. As she floats upwards towards the Queen's domain, Alice looks down at the other players and tells them, "You are all hopeless. If you work together, you could escape this place too." The other players ignore her and continue fighting until they are overtaken by chaos. She focuses on her path and says, "Not everyone can be safe, but you will do nicely." She holds on to the rabbit's hand as he approves, and they gaze into the sky together. Alice and her rabbit companion land back in the Queen's domain. The knave is there throwing a half-hearted cheer for her success. They reach a crossroads with confusing signs pointing in every direction, making it unclear which way to go. The knave comments on her passing through judgment, but Alice questions if anyone is truly free of guilt. She suggests that people often make excuses for their own failures. The knave tries to dismiss Alice's words, saying that it doesn't matter what her answer is because the Queen is too powerful. You can see fear in his eyes for a moment. He warns her that the road ahead is a battlefield, with the Queen's forces under attack from all sides. The court of judgment was corrupted and has turned against the Queen herself, and the path is blocked by darkness. Alice is determined to move forward, stating that actions speak louder than words. She refuses to be stopped by the knave warnings and leaps into the battle. The knave is left behind, a bit nervous, consulting his cards for guidance. Alice follows the rabbit, moving towards the Queen Castle. The path is dangerous, filled with broken islands, card guards, and threatening chaos creatures. Alice hopes, fights, and climbs until the castle finally comes into view. Alice, following her rabbit doll, is running through a dangerous, chaotic landscape. The chaos creatures and chess pieces are fighting everywhere against the card guards that are losing. Alice reaches the gates of the Queen's castle, but the bridge is being raised. She manages to cross. Once inside, a giant tentacle seals the gate behind her. Chaos creatures chase Alice and the rabbit. She must quickly make decisions to dodge attacks and keep moving forward. This would be quick time events. Alice enters the towering halls of the Queen's castle. The echoes of battle fade as she walks through the corridors, noticing many card guards who are badly injured or slain. Blood covers the area, and Alice's usual tough attitude begins to waver as she kneels beside the dying card guard. Alice expresses sadness, wondering aloud about the suffering around her and what purpose it serves. The card guard, with his last breaths, warns her about the spread of chaos. He explains that chaos is now beyond control, and if it continues to rule inside their world, everything will be lost. A deep roar echoes through the hallways of the castle. Followed by the card guard's scream, he realizes they are too late before succumbing to his injuries. Players take control of Alice as she navigates the maze-like halls of the Queen's Castle. The floors are covered in blood-red carpets and the chandeliers sway above her. Along her path, Alice encounters locked doors that she needs to open by resolving puzzles. Alice faces ambushes from corrupted enemies and chaos-infected creatures. These encounters escalate the tension as she battles her way through the castle-infested corridors. There's a new enemy, the Boojums, that are ghastly enemies with a terrifying scream attack. They appear in groups and ambush Alice, especially in confined spaces. The chore leader is a priority target since it can summon even more enemies to join the battle. Defeating the leader quickly is crucial to avoid being overwhelmed. After that, Ali faces the Executinator, an unstoppable and monstrous enemy that chases her through the dark halls of the Queen's Castle. The fight is divided into chases, sequences, and tense platforming segments where Alice must rely on stealth and clever navigation to survive. The Executinator, corrupted by chaos, manages to find her again later and she needs to fight him. Direct attacks don't work. Instead, players must use environmental elements to evade them. Alice needs to break the floor to defeat the enemy. When that happens, chaos consumes the castle, plunging both Alice and the enemy into a deep abyss. Alice floats to safety and lands in the depths of the Queen's Castle, where a crooked sign reveals her next destination, the dungeons. Alice and her rabbit explore the depths beneath the Queen's Castle. The knave appears acting anxious and unsettled. He shows Alice his tarot cards, revealing that every card he pulls is the death card. He warns her that chaos is breaking through the walls and that there is no return from this point. Despite his attempts to change her mind, Alice insists on continuing her journey. He warns that navigating the dungeon will be challenging, but she must keep moving upwards to survive. He notes that the prisoners held here are kept in confusion and fear. Alice moves forward through a door, but as soon as she passes, a heavy gate slams shut behind her, separating her from the knave. She navigates a chaotic maze of staircases and walkways where the layout makes it impossible to tell what's up or down. The lower levels are the most confusing and hold the most confused prisoners, like insane children, twisted nurses and doctors, and other strange wonderland creatures that don't seem to care about her presence. These enemies represent parts of Alice's anger and trauma. There's a dangerous red light through the area that makes it hard for Alice to move or fight because weird things happen. The safest way for her to proceed is to avoid the light. As she reaches the second level, the paths and layout become easier to understand. Here, Alice encounters more abstract characters, including Asylum or the Lies, Dinah the cat, and faceless figures that resemble members of her family. This part introduces the Scrapper enemies, which have both Asylum and Clockwork variants. These enemies hide in the shadows and can be found lying on the ground, as if inactive. Asylum Scrappers attack aggressively if they detect Alice, while the Clockwork ones remain still until disturbed, then quickly become hostile. These enemies will be still once the crank on their back has finished spinning, which will be a perfect opportunity for Alice to pass. After a while, they start moving again after they crank themselves again. The sound is key to locating them as they make distinct metallic noises. The dungeon environment changes as Alice reaches the third level, where the pets look like museum displays. Prisoners are put on display, trapped in red light that represents Alice's deep anger. The twisted figures include disturbing representations of her sister Lizzie, a multi-limbed train conductor eating at Dr. Bumby, and other characters from her trauma. When consumed by chaos, these figures turn into more odd and disturbed things. At the end of this area, Alice finds a cathedral-like room with a large empty frame. You can hear fire cracking, a child laughing, and some music from a box and toys. In a cutscene, she notices a small mirror and sees a reflection of a younger version of herself, identified as the Child of Fire, resembling a previous memory scene. This scene presents a crucial encounter between three characters: Alice, the Child of Fire, and the Shadow. It starts with Alice confronting a younger ghost-like version of herself that is the Child of Fire. Their conversation reveals painful memories and guilt over the past. Alice asks the Child of Fire who she is and why she's there. The Child of Fire responds with a very monotone replies, expressing her entrapment and saying that she's like a piece of Alice's own pain and anger. She is the Child of Fire because of the fire in Alice's home. The Child of Fire reveals her suffering, accusing Alice of having locked her away with memories too painful to face. She recalls a haunting moment when someone blamed her for the tragic events. As the Child of Fire expression shifts from sorrow to fear, the Shadow appears holding a warped blade. This dark and monstrous entity is a twisted reflection of Alice's inner fears and anger. The Shadow taunts both Alice and the Child of Fire, mocking their weaknesses and failures. It blames Alice for her inability to move on from her pain, provoking her with sharp, biting words. The confrontation escalates when the Shadow attacks the Child of Fire, piercing her back and converting her into a chaos creature. In a heartbreaking transformation, the Child of Fire innocent form is consumed, turning into a monstrous version driven by rage. The Shadow then taunts Alice, daring her to face her own fears. Alice's response shows her determination despite the fear. She stands her ground. The exchange ends with the Shadow shrouding itself in smoke, leaving the challenge hanging in the air. It's time for a boss battle. The encounter is set in the anger and judgment realm, and it highlights a critical moment in Alice's journey through her memories and inner demons. The Child of Fire has transformed into a grotesque chaos creature, representing a deeply rooted memory filled with anguish and guilt. Her appearance is characterized by being engulfed in flames, symbolizing her intense emotional pain and the fiery nature of her anger. The Child of Fire moves with erratic spider-like motions, using long chain-like tentacles that extend from her body. These tentacles serve as both weapons and shields. The chains also turn other NPCs to chaos creatures to aid in the battle. The Child of Fire targets Alice with a deadly strike. In a touching twist, Alice's rabbit sacrifices itself, leaping into the path of the attack and absorbing the blow. The moment is filled with emotional weight as the chaos begins to consume the rabbit. The rabbit convulses and both him and Alice are lifted
upwards by tentacles, escaping the child of fire. The chapter ends on a cliffhanger as Alice finds herself face to face with the Queen of Hearts. The Queen mentions that Alice is intruding where she does not belong, accusing her of disrupting the order and bringing the chaos with her. Alice responds defiantly, refusing to follow the Queen's script. She declares her autonomy, rejecting the role the Queen attempts to force upon her. The Knave tries to placate the Queen, making excuses about the failure of his cards, which symbolizes his flawed schemes. The Queen dismisses him harshly. As Alice attempts to speak, the Queen's tentacles physically silence her. The Vorpal blade, a weapon that symbolizes Alice's courage and strength, is snatched away. The Queen orders Alice's return to the circus, a place of imprisonment and forced performance, implying that Alice has no control over her fate. Says also that the Knave will have his head cut and that the rabbit is going to the dungeon. Card guards start approaching the Knave to cut his head while he stands on his knees. The Knave realizes that following the rules didn't do any good to him. Smiling, he decides to face the card guards by using his cards to slice them, and frees Alice's Vorpal blade. Defying the Queen's accusations of breaking the rules, Alice rejects her control, declaring, "Rules be damned, time to make our own." Alice uses the blade to free herself from the tentacles, and the Knave pushes the lever to close the dungeon to save the rabbit. The Queen embodies manipulation and control, lashing out with tentacles and summoning card guards. Alice, aided by the Knave, battles the Queen of Hearts in a fight. Together they fight off waves of card guards as the Knave attacks with razor-sharp playing cards. Alice delivers the final blow, beheading the Queen with the Vorpal blade. One of her tentacles releases the rabbit that Alice catches. He is dying. Alice cries, holding the rabbit. A tiny clockwork heart falls from the rabbit's pocket. The Knave uses it to remove the corruption on the rabbit. The scene transitions into a memory of Alice's childhood with Lizzie. In this scene, Alice is a young girl playing with her older sister Lizzie. They are spinning around the living room, laughing together. Suddenly, Alice loses her balance and knocks over a porcelain tea set. It shatters and she falls, cutting her knee on the broken pieces. Alice starts crying, confused by the sight of blood. Lizzie steps in, calmly reassuring her little sister while bandaging the cut, making Alice feel better. In this part, Alice and Lizzie get scolded by their mother for playing where they shouldn't. Their mother sends them off to their rooms without supper, while she cleans their mess. On the way, their father stops them and gently advises Lizzie to take better care of Alice, not just when she's hurt. He also speaks kindly to Alice, explaining that there's a right time and place for play. He reassures her that while her mother's rules may seem harsh, it's all for her own good. Alice sees herself as a child holding her sister's hand as they walk upstairs. She tries to reach out to her father, but he fades away, turning to ash. The little family home transforms into a cathedral filled with mourners. It's the funeral of Alice's family, and she hears voices blaming her for their deaths. The caskets suddenly catch fire, and Alice hears the screams of her family. Amidst the chaos, Alice floats before the caterpillar, who comforts her, reminding her that she still has herself and needs to start from there. The scene shifts, showing a memory of Alice's baptism, symbolizing her rebirth before everything fades to black. Alice regains consciousness in the room throne, where the Knave reveals they have both been manipulated by powerful forces, including the Hatter. The Knave, himself a mechanical manipulator, urges Alice to confront the truth and think for herself, giving her a deck of razor-sharp playing cards, a rage weapon that will aid her in her adventure. Together they navigate the Queen's Castle to the Hall of Doors, a surreal labyrinth symbolizing choices and hidden truths that kinda show Alice's journey of self-discovery and defiance against control.